Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Produced by Barber and Star Fox Radio. My ghouls and creatures of the night. Yes, once again, you have found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den. Except, yes, this is not Midnight Lycanthropy this round. No, it is Camp Nightmare Fuel with, of course, Mr. Barber and Barb Hartman. We always do seem to cover some pretty dark and interesting things here that do need to be broadcasted. Yet tonight, at least from the perspective of the content I have covered so far on my end, this is by far the most disturbing and nightmare-packed information. I am going to blindside Miss Hartman and, of course, Mr. Barber and the audience. Brian, what's good, dude? How you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. Had an awesome weekend. I got to tell Barb about the Bigfooting. Lots of stuff happening out there. So things are shaping up to be a good summer.
It's great stuff right there. Glad to hear that. Make sure to keep on doing things you enjoy. That is always a positive. What about you, Miss Hartman? What's good?
Let's see. Well, back at our regular house, our main home. That sounds so stupid and pretentious. It's like, ugh. But anyway, so back on the Key Peninsula, and I got some really weird audio, which I had sent to you, Star Fox, right? And then I have to share that with you too, Brian, because super weird audio on my camera. It's probably has to do with Sasquatch. I don't know what else. But so that's that.
You heard that to the audience. Both my sidekicks staying busy. As always, make sure to check out the links in the description to head on over to both of their threads, so that way you're able to get indulged with some great information. Sounds like you both been pretty busy as well. Same on my end. A bunch of editing, which is good. Hashtag repeat.
Great stuff.
Appreciate you again too. I do not have time to thank everybody. I'm going to try to make a Facebook post about it, yet this video is going to be dropping in a few days. I would like to take a second and thank everybody that has supported what I've been trying to do here on LordeStarfox Radio, Midnight Lycanthropy, the Midnight Society, Camp Nightmare Fuel now. Last 12 months was a grind for sure. I finally got accepted into the YouTube partner, which was a goal, a dream that I have, had for quite a long time. It was, no exaggeration, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And I mean, I've overcome some things, which is for another day. Yet, yeah, it was a crazy grind, but everybody that has spent time on my thread, sharing it around, bringing in great information, hitting the thumbs up. I love every single one of you. Thank you again for the effort that you have also put into these projects.
Congratulations. I know how hard you've worked. I know, we talk all the time, and whoa. And this guy, like, you are just always Always downloading, always editing, always just churning out content. Seriously, right? Like, I mean, no, yeah, you well deserved.
Such kind words. A quick little pro to anybody out there that's a smaller content creator, such as myself. If you do not have a large audience yet, it's okay. Don't get discouraged. Just keep on churning out content. Now that I have a little bit more time to think, I'm going to be putting out 1 to 2 videos a week, but there was a point in time that I was putting out 2 to 3 a day. All right. Definitely at least once a day. Meaning if you're only getting 50, 60, 70 views from your loyal individuals, well, that still adds up.
Yep, you ground your way to the top, and now it's time to ride the wave and continue to grow.
I am going to drop one little bit more cookie crumb here before I allow you and Barb to sit here and try and figure out for this first part real quick, what the heck happened to the group that were called the Lost Boys of Pickering that have never been found. Yes, we do need to figure out what is happening over there with those individuals, because I do think I have some very important information that will get both of you quite interested into, well, what I do have to spill on the table. On a final note, though, yes, hopefully, if all goes well, next week we do have a call with a History Channel. Yet, that's all I can say at the moment right there.
That's exciting. Exciting stuff.
Way to give us just a little taste and wanting for the main course.
Isn't that the best way to do it, though, right? You just gotta stir the pot just a tad bit.
Yep, now we just let it simmer and everything to marinate.
This is very awesome. Well, I did want to purposely blindside both of you on this one. The next one I do cover, I will be sending over to you. I just felt the previous two needed to keep you a little bit on your toes, even though Mr. Barber kind of cheated a little bit last time. Yeah, I don't know if he knew the whole insides and out. Tonight, though, again, pretty optimistic. This one's going to have gone under the radar for both of you. I did slightly mention a little bit Mr. Barber when him and I did have a show over on another network that decided I wasn't cool enough to chill anymore. Yeah, either way, we're going to finish this up tonight. Did both of you get a chance to dive into the Lost Boys of Pickering?
Yes, but I need to interject. I did not cheat. I merely took advantage of the circumstances that you provided me in the picture.
This is very true. I probably shouldn't have sent you a picture where you could just zoom in and be like, hey, what's going on? I mean, I got to give you credit, though. If I'm trying to actually write where I care about my penmanship, yeah, I try. But, dude, when I'm sitting here like right now, man, it looks pretty bad. I think my niece, who's like 2, has better penmanship than I do.
Well, that's why I have readers and a zoom on my camera, my friend.
That's so awesome. On a real funny note, it was the worst job I ever had being a server at the Olive Garden. You at least had computers, but there were points in time when I was younger and I worked at little holes in the wall where there weren't computers and you had to write down your order and put it on a like skewer. Dude, you know how many times the cooks were so ticked off? Be like, yo, dude, what are you writing, man? And I'd be like, I don't even know, dude. I can't even read it now, man.
That's the reason why I had to be a cook, was because my penmanship was so bad I couldn't wait tables at my mom's restaurant.
That's so awesome. Great stuff right there. Well, which one of you beautiful individuals would like to first dive into your thoughts of the Lost Boys of Pickering before you toss it to the other side? And then, yes, kick it over to me and we will continue the snowball effect.
I actually, as I'm reading it, the link that you sent me, I was thinking, this sounds weirdly familiar. But, you know, I mean, the disappearance of 6 teenage, like you said, healthy, you know, there was not a lot of weird circumstances going on with this. I mean, you know, a lot of things that would add to the mystery, but not a lot of weird stuff. And then I realized, see, I lived in Rochester, New York, and when some of the evidence was found, I believe it was the pants that was, we had been living there. So it was like, oh, you know, and then I realized, yeah, I was familiar with it. You know, to have 6 healthy young men, you know, without any physical issues, disabilities, to just go missing is just very, very, well, obviously it's very sad, very disturbing, very tragic. It doesn't seem like anything was treated or was handled as it should be. There was a lot of redacted information on all of the reports. So so these boys, they ranged from, I think, 16 to 18, all friends, all had grown up in this area in Canada, but it was right across Lake Ontario from kind of Buffalo, New York, and I lived to the east of that, Rochester, New York. And these boys were at a party. It was a booze, you know, kind of party. I think maybe spring break or something like that. Yeah, because it was in March. And they said they were leaving the party. And I don't know if I recall or if it was even said why, but they all were going to leave the party. And that's the last that people had seen of them. There were 2 watercraft, I guess you would say, that turned up missing. One was this big, almost like a tricycle that you ride on the water that really can hold 2 people, but not, you know, it's more one person. You know, those you just sit on top of the water. It's like a big tricycle. So that went missing, and then a boat, which was a replica of a Boston whaler type of a boat. And now those are not, it's not a huge, I believe the boat was like 14, 15, 16 feet. I can't remember for sure, but you know, not a huge boat. And Boston whalers are, they are known to be pretty much unsinkable the way that they're constructed. Now, this was not a genuine, you know, brand name, but constructed very similarly. So these guys go out. Presumably they were, I believe, spotted on, or 3 of them were spotted supposedly on some video at the marina. But again, just 3 of them. And then the sister of one of them called a few hours later saying that her brother had not, I think it was a sister or a girlfriend. One of the young men had a girlfriend that he had a baby with. So I don't remember. One of them, you know, had alerted the police, and they said, "Oh, well, you're going to have the mothers of all the boys are going to have to call and report officially, you know, missing people reports," which is kind of like, wait, what? These are teenage boys. This is 6 teenage boys. And then also it was revealed that police officer that took that initial report, he just didn't do anything with it. He kind of, so there's a lot of things that, that were not handled properly. Once all the reports were filed, there was an air search and a search on the water, and there was a boat that they had seen that I believe the a helicopter had seen that was just below the surface, but there's no record that anybody ever went to look, you know, to investigate that boat, and that was really it. So these kids all grew up in that area. They're all used to being on boats. They're probably, you know, I believe they were all fairly strong swimmers. I just find it really hard to believe that all 6 of them and the boats, the boat and this tricycle thing never, disappeared off the face of the earth. Nothing ever, not one shred of evidence ever came up. The other thing is that they did spend a lot of time investigating to the fact that these kids probably took these boats and went out, and they never really did a lot of investigation into, was there a potential at something else? So that's basically it. Now, Lake Ontario is very cold and really all year round. So if you fall in March, you're not going to, even a strong swimmer is not going to last very long. But is it a situation where they all fell in? It just seems weird to me. What do you think, Brian?
You covered all the fine details, and it is really strange, the fact that 6 of them disappeared without any traces, any of them, and that if I remember right, it took the police officer 3 days to even start looking, because of the fact that he said nobody was in danger, the family was full of crap.
Right.
And then it actually took 6 days for them to start searching. And
I
they
believe
came up
that's
with, and they came up with nothing. But then, however long it was later, they looked at the video and they actually caught 3 of the boys on video. They didn't catch the other 3, but then after they see the 3 boys on video, what they didn't release to everybody was the fact that they caught more people. I believe it was
correct.
in a guy where they look like they're reacting to something, but it was never officially reported, even though it was on the video, and the video was never investigated. According to the articles, that one of those boys happened to, apparently have a ongoing relationship with law enforcement that wasn't favorable, and they hint at the fact that maybe law enforcement kind of dragged their feet because of it.
Yes, I got the same impression.
I know Star Fox is probably going to give me crap for this, but because I'm going to guess a little bit, it almost sounds like some kind of cover up at some point, where the investigation was maybe flawed, so they are just trying to bury this thing, because I don't think they have any evidence of the other 3 boys. So the 6 of them came up missing for some reason. Did they see something they weren't supposed to? Was the boats an issue? Was there something in the boats? I mean, what would cause 6 people to just vanish and then
Right.
do nothing, basically?
And they didn't even prove that these boys had taken. There's no proof that they actually took these 2 pieces, water vessels. These just continue to get mentioned, and it's just then also there was a pair of pants that was found in the water, and I think a belt and a wallet that didn't have any identification. It had the wallet was completely empty. One of the boys, I believe it was the one that had the little baby, I think his name was Jay, who the little baby is now 20, in her 20s, I think it said. They said he had a pair of red Levi's that he wore frequently. And there's photos online, of him in these red Levi's. Now, initially, when these pants were found, that is exactly what is in the report, that it's a pair of red Levi's. Well, then somehow the report changes that it's not a pair of red Levi's. It's a pair of orange, like pants that you would wear, like quick dry, I think, type of pants, that you would wear for boating. And so then they said, oh, definitely it can't. So I believe that the family was really pressuring them. And I don't know if there was something that happened or was found, but the family was really pressuring them. And so then the determination quickly came back. So it went from red Levi's, and then it was a few years later, oh no, they're not, they're orange, boating pants. So
Yeah, and we've all been involved in the cryptid world long enough to know that, the fact that I'm sure it was the county or state, and you have to go by the results of the person doing the testing, and you have to take their word for it unless you take it to an independent lab. So if they're trying to cover something up, who's to say, well, yeah, it wasn't a match.
Right. And obviously, this is all speculation on our part, you know, based on what the information that we're given. We're not saying that that anybody did that. We don't know. And I'm sure, I'm just sure that the family of the boys, they would like to find out what happened, because to have no trace of these boys, it could be a situation with their bodies that somehow, if they were somehow trapped under the water, that stays cold enough to preserve the bodies, kind of like what we had talked about in the previous episode of Camp Nightmare Fuel about the woman from Crescent Lake, the Lady of the Lake. Could be a situation like that, but it just seems really impossible almost that nothing of the water vessels or any of these kids ever was found. Not one bit of anything.
And there's only evidence of the 3 being at the marina, right? So, I mean, technically, we're taking someone's word that all 6 were together.
Right. So, StarFox, is there anything that anything else that you heard in your research or you found out?
I would just first off like to say, there we go. Great stuff by both of you, covering exactly what I wanted you both to, because what if I told you that is only maybe 20% of what we're going to talk about tonight? Yet I do think I have a theory of what happened to them, and also many of the missing indigenous women.
Well, I'm interested to hear.
Yes, me too.
All right. Well, Miss Hartman and Mr. Barber, are you both ready to, of course, make a contract with LordeStarfox as we again dive in to some nightmare fuel?
You cost me 2 pints on the last one. I don't have much left.
That's
We're
awesome.
here for it. We're here for it.
All right. Well, here we go. I would like to call this the darkness of the Canadian forest. We have July 20th, 2024. First appearing on 4chan. All right, let's have a timeout for a second, okay? 4chan is about 20/80 credibility, meaning 80% of that stuff is absolutely absurd. Yet there are points in time where people have dropped signings with individuals for sports or movie companies, or telling a date a certain game or movie is going to be dropped. Also, some other pretty important information has been first dropped on 4chan. All right, there's your 20%. Well, now you have the 80% of absolutely insane stuff up on there, okay? Yet it also made its way to Reddit and other spots of the internet, okay? So we're not just specifically dealing with 4chan, which again, though, everyone take this with a grain of salt. Yet I do have a lot of things that are going to be pieced together here that have a lot to do with this. Yet the only issue is we fully have to go off the person that is telling us this. All right. There's a bunch of other people involved, yet this one individual is the only person that has spoken about this. Okay. We all know how I personally feel about things like that, but let's keep on going. The following confession claims every year in the northern part of Canada, a chilling ritual occurs. His words are, I'm soon and need to tell the world something. I'm part of a group of First Nations people living in Canada. There is a group of 500 men from across the country who are very wealthy and hunt people 2 times a year deep in the forest. I myself have been a part of this since I was 27. I began as a scout, then became a hunter myself. Over the years, I have been involved in over 57 hunts and have 24 people. I was also involved in kidnapping and transporting hundreds of people, including the Lost Boys of Pickering. His post ends with a photo of a Lee Enfield 303 rifle, which he claimed was his hunting rifle for 90% of the hunts. He had also mentioned he was 67 years old, bedridden, and was in hospice care. Yet throughout his post, he left little cookie crumbs. He was, as well as the other hunters, from very wealthy tribes. Our money and stature allows for the abduction of anyone, anywhere, at any point in time in Canada. He said the majority of the abductees were immigrants who would go unnoticed for long periods of time, or people that were just spending points in time in the country, but not total citizens. They also preyed on native female hitchhikers, and that they were largely responsible for the majority of missing Indigenous women in Canada. We stay away from the weak because they have no fight left. We target men and women in their prime. We gather and let out 10 at a time and move out accordingly. He claimed he never took any sort of body trophies, but most hunters did for some sort of dark purposes after. There has never been a hunt where one of our group hasn't been by either other members who had internal beefs that waited for this hunt to happen, or every once in a while, the survivors might get the best of the hunters. He said that actually a lot of the survivors got away, but it didn't matter. They were in the middle of nowhere, barefoot with no supplies. He said they weren't going to get anywhere and that their fate was already sealed. He also said many hunters enjoyed sending in their bear dogs out after the survivors. They would then come across torn up survivors or barely breathing ones. The poster said his favorite hunt took place in 1989 near Canapiscak, Quebec, in an abandoned Hudson Bay Company post on the northern shores of the Grand River east of James Bay at the mouth of the Canapiscak River. It involved 9 airplanes filled with 45 victims and 120 hunters. The prey ranged from 18 to 55 years old and were strong, well fed, and taken care of before the hunt. They were given knives and hatchets and 3 days of rest and food before they were allowed to have a head start. Anyone that stood up against the rules was immediately disposed of to keep everybody else in line. 2 men who were trying to flee barricaded themselves in an old fire tower that we set ablaze and watched them burn. This is where his post completely ends. What if I told you when I did some of my own research? Yes, there is an abandoned place right where he says there is one. What if I also told you on July 2nd, 1989, in this exact spot and area, 20,000 acres of forest was consumed by fire? Ironic much? Well, Barb, I would like to hear what you have to say before we hear what Mr. Barber said.
Well, I find this very interesting, obviously in a very tragic way. I know that there is a large population of missing Indigenous women just out of Washington State, where I reside. As of May 1st, 2023, there were 142 Indigenous individuals statewide, with 62 being juveniles. And since Indigenous women represent a significant portion of the missing persons cases, that suggests at least 50 to 80 missing Indigenous women likely. Now, I ask about their ages, and That's in line with what you're saying. There, okay, so 34 adult women and 31 female juveniles. So it's really a half, roughly half are minors, half are adults. But the ages we're talking, they're mostly in the 20s to 30s age bracket. Yeah, so there's a very small portion are over 30. So this is exactly with what this claim is. And now not with what this gentleman is talking about. Well, I don't even want to call him a gentleman. This POS is talking about what has gone on. This is not something new, unfortunately, right? They cover this in movies, and a lot of times there's a lot of reality, based in movies. So it's terrible, but this definitely lends credence to what this guy's saying.
So with the indigenous women, is it just because they're easy? Is it racial, or is it because they're easy opportunity? Because I do remember touching on this. It seemed to me, I remember the indigenous women were in the minority population-wise, but they were in the majority of the missing people.
I don't think it's racial in the fact that they're, well, I shouldn't say that. It's probably not that they're being targeted because of their race, but it's the opportunity is there, which is horrible, but they don't have proper representation.
Yeah, they pick up on the people that, I mean, no different than some of these other serial that, pick on the homeless and people like that because they won't be noticed. And
Right.
it's speculation, but, there are some of the elite, if you want to call them that have the cash and have the ability to have this stuff happen to the point of sport. The idea came from somewhere, and we all know that, legends have a kernel of truth to them. So,
right. I also, it's interesting what LordeStarfox, what you said about the wildfires, or the consuming like all these acres and acres, because there were and it's probably still going on in British Columbia. There were terrible forest fires, and it was a situation. Well, how did they start? And yeah, and that's a lot of that is going on in Canada. So I'm wondering, that just adds more leverage to this claim.
and not only that, but did the fires happen before or after this guy made his confession?
Great questions right there, and observations by both of you. Well, the thing is, he specifies the date of when his favorite hunt happened. All right. The fact that it happened in July of that year is just something I happen to stumble upon, meaning I don't really believe in coincidences. I personally think, just like he says, they didn't put out the fire, they didn't care to. I think those fires were started from that. And I have a little bit of me that potentially thinks maybe when these large fires are breaking out, it has something to do with this, because he claims every 2 years they participate in this stuff.
And he is a First Nations. Is that what you had said?
Yes.
Remember? And this would definitely, oh, this is interesting again in a very tragic way, but it's, talk about going down a rabbit hole, because on the West Coast, there are just rampant wildfires at this time of the year. And, well, not maybe a little bit later into the summer, actually. And why aren't the forests being taken care of? Is this why? Is there a cover up, an intentional cover up going on?
Again, so creepy. And Mr. Barber had asked something. Well, also too, I know here in the United States, what happens with indigenous women is, even men, isn't really documented that well on reservations. From some of my friends that are indigenous that understand what happens there, seems like they do a lot of their own policing, etc. All right. Meaning, again, now it would be very easy, like this guy was saying, to prey on foreigners, okay, or people that were tourists, because you're not even technically supposed to be there. And now with the indigenous women, you're hiking by yourself or hitchhiking by yourself. They don't even really keep track of what happens to you. That's about as easy as it gets right there, unfortunately. Also, what Barb was saying, that highway into Washington, all down there, connects up into Canada as well. Pretty bizarre stuff. They have money, right? Think for a second, if they are offering people money, like Brian and yourself had mentioned in the video, where you see three of them talking to people, what if it's one of these individuals asking them if they want to come party and make some money and stuff? You get in the van, you're toast.
Yeah, they seem like the perfect specimens for someone to find. I'm not thinking right. And like you said, yeah, somebody pulls up and said, hey, you want to make some money? And well, okay, tell us about that. There's six of us thinking, you think, well, there's power in numbers. So what's this person going to do to six of us? But then who knows what went on from there.
Right. And this was, I'm sorry, was it 89?
95. 1995.
So even the 90s were a very different time than we got now. People were a
Oh,
lot
for
more
sure.
trusting. And the fact that, turning this, the fact that he names and specifies the Pickering boys is what gets me.
Mm-hmm.
Was it notoriety? He brought it up for a reason. It's kind of like, but he wasn't in a position where like a, Mr. Bundy, where the longer he talked, the further off his sentence got to be carried out. So it wouldn't make sense for him to just to start naming names for clout if he was in hospice care at the time. I think LordeStarfox mentioned.
Right. But why would you want to? Okay, presuming this is all true, that all of his claims are true, well, no. Let's go this route. Let's presume that they aren't, and he's just doing this for attention. Why would you do something like that? Why would you? This is a pretty elaborate, story to come up with. But who knows?
I think the hunt part's true, and then maybe because that's such a famous case, maybe it is to add clout to his story to make it seem more newsworthy.
Or yeah, maybe, as terrible as what these people are doing, maybe his a little bit of conscience, is telling him, well, I can give some details to the family, which is just sad because they just would like, I'm sure, any sort of details, but it has to be correct. It can't be something fabricated.
Yeah, again, great stuff by both of you. As I did dive into this and tried to piece together some of the things both of you pieced together, a couple of my thoughts would be, if he really wanted clout or publicity, you would think he would have gone to somebody that was large, that had a large follow basis, potentially, not 4chan, Reddit, and some other select areas to access something. Doesn't really seem like a good way to really get any sort of clout. I mean, sure, people that spend time on 4chan and Reddit are aware of it. I spend zero time on 4chan, and I have spent some time on Reddit. Not a big fan of it personally. It seems like an area of boo-hooers. All right. Yet, like Brian had said, sure, that's a well-known case if you follow this type of stuff. Yet I had never heard of it until it was mentioned, and then I looked into it myself. I don't know if it's mainstream enough to get you publicity on that aspect either. Also, a little bizarre that he knows exactly where this abandoned facility slash building was near this river where they would house the people and feed them and stuff and let them go afterwards. seems pretty random. And then also the year he claims his favorite hunt occurs, you have a massive forest fire, you have the lost Pickering boys, then you have a ton of the missing indigenous women. I personally don't really know how to digest this as an investigative photojournalist. Everything I just named, I was able to verify. Yet everything else, we're going off of this one individual. Yes, he did show his weapon of choice in that video. It was indigenous. He did name these areas. There was a forest fire. We know these people are missing. These are all facts. Yet if I'm able to figure this out, anyone can figure this out. And if you did want to make a hoax, you could piece all that together. Again, I still don't know what to make of this. That's pretty much some of my final thoughts. Mr. Barber, where do you stand on this before we allow Barb to make some final references? And
because this was a life-ending confession, right?
yes.
So maybe he wasn't sure how much time he had left. So maybe if you put it on like Fortune and Reddit, it's something that he's hoping will spread after he passes, so he doesn't go mainstream and get locked up for the last 32 minutes or whatever he had left and on the life clock. But it's like it's confusing from that standpoint because only had 3 people talking to him, but I mean they went somewhere, so they didn't just fall into a portal. And like Barb had mentioned, the fact that they are prime candidates for that type of event and in the right area. So you have to, I think it's a 50-50.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brian. This definitely adds a layer of possibility to what happened to them, because I just don't think that there would be that they would be lost to Lake Ontario. It's large, but it's not. It's I just don't think it's very implausible with 6 young men, adults, that were strong swimmers, and 2 boats go missing. And all of this is supposedly never, not one shred of evidence is found of any of it. Except I didn't mention that there was a gas can that was found over on the other side of the lake, near Buffalo, New York. I believe it was Wilson. And the police made this kind of a big deal about, oh, this is probably the gas can, because it had some sort of a dent in it that the owner of the boat identified as. But so that that just seems very implausible. Obviously, it's not impossible, but is implausible. And this, what this guy was saying, certainly is, unfortunately, it's just horrific to think about. It's I just. But we know that people just have some evil. We have evil people in this world, and to think that I just can't even. I cannot even imagine. I can't imagine doing this, and you're stealing them, in their prime, and taking their lives and terrifying them. Oh my gosh, the thought of this happening to one of my kids is just terrible, just devastating. If this is a big hoax, a big ruse that this man came up with to post, I don't know. I think that there's definitely some truth to it, regardless of whether his complete version is, facts or not. I think it's definitely something that is plausible, unfortunately.
Gnarly stuff. Definitely nightmare fuel. Great observations by both of you. I myself can definitely verify when I was the age that they were. If, again, this is a if, right? Some attractive women came up and asked if I wanted to come hang out or party, you don't even have a struggle right there. That is probably the easiest possible way to get 6 friends that are fit without a struggle.
For sure, in a town, you know, like that, for sure. Oh my gosh, I think about the things that I did as a teenager. Oh my gosh. At this Jersey Shore, you know, my cousins and I'd walking along and some cute guys, hey, you want to come over to our house? And oh, sure. You know, and then the next thing you're sitting in a complete stranger's house.
Yep.
You know, listening to music, whatever.
American Psycho much with Christian Bale?
Yeah.
Right?
And then like, wait a minute. Whoa, oh, you know, no thought that, oh, that could never happen to us. Wow. It's yeah.
Well, I had kind of it sounds like, Barb, you were in a bigger town where, you know, here I am in a small town and there's some local party spots. And I remember one in particular where we were given directions to go to this party from a friend of a friend. And it was 3 miles down different 2 tracks. You had to make sure you got this 2 track right and got this right. And then we're down there and we're literally in the middle of nowhere, no GPS at the time. And we're taking people's words. And next thing you know, they're like, well, how are we going to know? And they're like, oh, you hear the music. And I'm just sitting there thinking, well, I hope it's not a banjo. But luckily, you know, all of a sudden you get out to where they were talking and they actually had a party and a generator and stuff, but that could have turned south real quick, you know, given today's.
Sure. Right. I came from a small town. I grew up in a small town, so that we definitely went to some some things like that, some festivities like that, and yeah, that you like you said, you're driving for on this, you know, 1-lane road, hoping, winding around mountains, thinking hopefully we're gonna make it there. Me and my, you know, 3 or 4 girlfriends, like, wow, that was not smart, but teenagers.
Right. Well, to the audience, yes, we do need to allow Mr. Barber as well as Barb Hartman to get back to things they do need to attend to. No worries, though. Just check out what they are churning out, or you can go down to the good old playlists, yes, and see a ton of great content we've already accumulated. And also, make sure to be tuning in to my little sister podcast, Camp Nightmare Fuel, that of course Barb Hartman and I have created and brought on our amazing sidekick, Mr. Barber. We will be churning out so much amazing stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, Mr. Barber.
My pleasure as always. It's good to get together with friends and go over Nightmare Fuel.
Yes, and same to you, Barb. It's always great to hang out. Thanks for chilling.
It is great. Thanks for having me. I'm just so glad that the 3 of us are doing this together. We've, you know, I mean, it's the topic is nightmare. You know, they're always nightmare fuel topics, but I wouldn't want to do it with any other guys than you two.